The difference between the winners and the losers is the winners buy something valuable. The losers are afraid to buy the valuable thing because it's too expensive. The way you make money is when you see a digital trend, everybody needs it, nobody can stop it, but nearly everybody disagrees with you. If you study history, you're going to find that the currency collapsed thousands of times, and it collapses everywhere on average every 50 years. The risk-reward proposition for Bitcoin in the year 2024 is better than any other time in the history of the asset.
你买最新的 iPhone 16了吗？还是有投资母公司 Apple 的股票呢？12年前，亿万富翁 Michael Saylor 非常看好苹果公司，当时股价$20，认为将上涨100倍，达到$2000。没想到至今上涨超过250倍 ，Michael Saylor 从中大赚一笔。那你呢？是普通消费者，还是抓住机会的成功投资者？如果12年前你错过了苹果的投资机会，那千万别再错过 Michael Saylor 现在投资的比特币。
但有读者问，比特币已经上涨到$6万，现在投资比特币会太晚吗？
Michael Saylor 认为，并且在最后 Michael Saylor 还分享我们小资族应该要把握才能成功，不再是听老一辈的投资建议。这次的访谈影片播放超过100万次，不管你现在是上班族、军人还是妈妈，无论你身处于台湾、香港还是美国，只要你不满意现在的收入，只要你想要透过投资改变人生，看完你都会非常有收获。记得分享给最好的家人朋友，因为赚钱不是人生目标，和家人朋友一起赚钱享受才是最幸福的事情。我相信他在未来会非常感谢你这一个小小的举动。嗨，我是 Emma， 带你在币圈趋势中打造属于自己的被动收入。记得订阅并打开小铃铛，这样你就不会错过财富密码咯。
Back in 2011, you made a huge bet on Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, and you wrote The Mobile Wave on why mobile technology will completely transform the world. You had huge conviction and you made a massive bet, and it turned out to be extremely successful. Now, the same thing's playing out. You have huge conviction on Bitcoin and you've made an enormous bet on it. I wanted to ask you the comparison between that first bet on the mobile wave on Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, and how it compares to your Bitcoin bet. Do you have more conviction in Bitcoin? Do you think it's more transformative a technology than the mobile wave? And back in 2011, if you compare it to Bitcoin today, was mobile tech as misunderstood by investors than Bitcoin is now?
Yeah, I think it's a good analogy. I think if you roll the clock back to that period, we were looking at the digital transformation of a bunch of things in society. I mean, Apple was the digital transformation of devices and communications, and Facebook was the digital transformation of relationships. The idea you could literally monetize someone's relationship with their friends, right? And with Apple, you know, your tape recorder, you know, dematerialized into the phone, and your camera dematerialized in your phone, and then all your photos dematerialized in the photo album, and then your CD collection dematerialized, you know, all these things, all your files dematerialized. So I always thought of technology like acid. It's just eating away and dematerializing things. Google just dematerialized every library in the world, and it, you know. And YouTube, you know, dematerialized most video, but also you're looking at the dematerialization of education and entertainment. Very profound things. So what are the consequences of that? Well, the idea that you could create one generic device, the iPhone, that 1 billion people would want, and that you could update and improve over the weekend with a software push. That was a big idea, right? That's a massive crystallization in the economy, whereby what if I told you I could replace 27 billion different devices manufactured by 1,000 different companies that come in 10,000 different form factors that are all analog, that are fixed, that can't be updated. And what if I said, we're going to replace all of those companies and all those devices and all that functionality with a single device running one operating system, the iOS, controlled by one company? Well, that would make that company the most valuable company in the world. And that would make that company the most valuable company in the world because that company could create the most value. because on the weekend they could give everybody 40 million songs, right? Everybody has, I'm giving everybody a 100,000 album library, and they can listen to any song anytime for the cost of electricity. And I don't have to manufacture 10 billion records or 10 billion CDs. And I don't have to have 100,000 music stores, right? Like it used to be there were stores and they put CDs in them and trucks rolled, right? We had factories to make them and we had trucks to deliver them, and we had 100,000 people to sort them and stack them, and we had stores and we paid for electricity, and people went to the store, Tower Records, and they picked it up. Well, the crystallization in physics, it's where you're collapsing to a low energy state. You're going from water vapor or steam to water to ice. And at each step, energy gets given off. Right? And it's a basic thermodynamic idea, energy, heat. But, in an economy, energy is money, right? Energy is profit. So when we collapse, when we stopped manufacturing film and cameras and recorders, and phonograph records and CVDs and DVDs and whatever you manufacture, when we stopped that, we reclaimed a huge amount of energy and that converted to money. And that accrued to the people most of it accrued to the people that use the Apple product. That's why they became the most famous brand, right? I mean, everybody knows it's kind of cool to have 500,000 photos on your iPhone, right? It's like, and they're all there. So it accrued to them, but a small portion of it accrued to Apple, and that went to their shareholders, and that made them the most valuable company in the world. So in 2010, 2011, I looked at it and I said, well, eventually everybody's going to want this. Eventually everybody's going to have a computer in their pocket. And it's pretty clear it's kind of a winner-take-all thing. Apple ended up generating all the profit in the mobile phone industry, and everybody else lost money to compete with them. So it wasn't like they had 20% market share and got 20% of the profit. It was like they had the best product. They had 150% of the profit. 150% of the profit, 25% of the market. Everybody else lost money to compete in the space. And, where did they go? Remember what happened to BlackBerry, what happened to Nokia, etc. Eventually, they all just went away. Motorola, yeah, if you recall. So why was I enthusiastic? Well, what I say is the way you make money is when you see a digital trend, everybody needs it, nobody can stop it, but nearly everybody disagrees with you. If the majority of people disagree with you, they don't understand it, but nobody can stop it, but everybody needs it. That describes Amazon, right? If you go back and read investment research on Amazon, everybody hated it. You know what they said? They said, oh, this is an awful retail company. They don't make any money. Well, they kept not making any money while they sucked the entire market up. And now there's Amazon, Walmart, and everybody else is bankrupt, right? 20,000 retail companies fail. One or two, Amazon, Walmart, Target kind of are there. And then Amazon runs by everybody. It's because everybody, who doesn't want to have everything they want delivered to their door in 1 hour for free? Who doesn't want that? Just like with Google, I want to go and I ask a question, I want the answer instantly, quick, and I want every book and every piece of information that the human race has at my fingertips instantly. Well, who doesn't want that? Everybody wants that. How about YouTube? Okay, well, it's everything you want to know for free instantly, everywhere in the world. Okay, so everybody's eventually going to need it. Billions, there's YouTube videos. They've got 9 billion views, on the video, right? So everybody wants it. Nobody can stop it. But then again, everybody thought it was a stupid idea, right? They didn't really get it. And the same was true with Apple. It's like people just didn't get it. And I'm like, well, a device that basically does everything you want it to do in your pocket that's, 1 million times more powerful than the computer in the space shuttle. And everybody said, well, it's too expensive. Remember they say it's too, you could buy Nokia phones for $30. And the iPhone came out and it was $500. And the people made fun of it. It's 10 times as expensive. What happened next? Well, Apple raised the price to $750. And the other phones were $20. And then Apple now sells iPhones for $1,500. So Apple keeps raising the price of the iPhone. And all these other cheap phones went to zero because at the end of the day, the point was it's what people want, right? It's just better. They don't want. People used to think, oh, they just want the cheap thing, just like they'd make fun of Amazon for this or that. But no, they don't. So those companies, they represent the digital transformation of retail, of information, of relationships. They made fun of Facebook. But, it's like when 4 billion people or 3 billion people are on a network, it's just so incredibly powerful that you can't stop the thing. These companies are now more powerful than a lot of countries, a lot of national governments. But the key point I'd make is the time to buy them was when everybody laughed at you. Back in 2010 to 2012, most people would have laughed at you. With regard to Apple, they would laugh. They would say, well, it's too expensive and Nokia's got the market or Motorola this or something. Or they'll never, the telephone companies will control the business. Or they would say, well, the stock is too high, so you should sell the stock. What happened a decade ago was the digital transformation of all those things. It was the digital transformation of information. And it created trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth. And you could have actually made a lot of money if you jumped on that wave. What you have to do is pick the winner. Right? There's 1,000 digital retail companies. There's one Amazon. You don't want the Amazon of Singapore. You don't want the Amazon of Nigeria. You want the Amazon, right? So you see, you have to pick that. There's one Apple. There's one Amazon. There's one Google. There's one Facebook. If you picked it, there's one Microsoft. If you pick it, you win. You pick the number 3, you probably lose. And so that was a big wave. But by 2020, that was still unstoppable. Like the Magnificent Seven has been an okay investment. Like if you bought all those stocks in 2020, you probably doubled the performance of the S&P index. The S&P index is up like 45%. If you picked the best 5 companies in the index, well, you double that performance. If you picked the rest had no return. Okay, so there's 493 or 490 companies that don't return anything. They're all losers. There's 5 to 10 companies that are the winners. And if you pick the winners, yeah, you do better than the index. If you pick the index, at least you brainlessly got some winners. But of course, Bitcoin outdid them by a factor of 3 or a factor of 2 to 3. So why was that? And the answer is by 2020, 98% of the people didn't disagree with you if you said Amazon was a good idea. See, by 2020, most people agreed with you that Amazon was a good idea. Most people thought, well, Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, they're monopolies, and Microsoft. Once everybody knows they're monopolies, once everybody knows they're unstoppable, once everybody knows that they need them, then you're not going to get a 10x or 100x performance anymore because all the capital is already moved into the market.
真的，投资大师巴菲特曾说：“别人贪婪，我恐惧；别人恐惧，我贪婪。”最好的投资要有这3项元素，很少人认同，没有人能阻止发展，每个人都需要。像是2012年的 Apple， 当时很少人认同这是一家好公司。但不论你喜不喜欢，随着科技的进步，手机迅速发展，台湾人手机持有率高达 90%， 甚至有些人连洗澡时都要带进去听音乐，就知道有多需要。但是当全世界都认同 Apple 是一家好企业， Apple 就不再是最好的投资，因为所有人都去买，价格已经太贵了。那现在最好的投资是什么呢？当然是比特币。符合这3大点，很少人认同，没有人能阻止发展，每个人都需要。比特币在2008年诞生至今，超过15年，价格从 0.001 元最高升到 7.3 万美元，也延伸出一个新问题。
The risk-reward proposition for Bitcoin in the year 2024 is better than any other time in the history of the asset because you have institutional adoption, you have regulatory clarity, you see capital coming into the space, and yet still you can do the survey yourself. Ask 100 of your friends if they're fully invested in Bitcoin and if they understand it. And if 95 say no, right, I would say do your own research. But Bitcoin's 15 years old. So let's look at other great investments. 15 years after Manhattan was founded, was it a good investment? We could start 200 years after Manhattan was founded. In 1776, roll the clock forward, 1791. Was it a good investment? And was real estate in Manhattan in 1791 a good investment? Was it a good investment in 1865 after the Civil War? Was it a good investment in 1970? Was it a good investment 15 years afterwards in, 1995? Was it a good investment in London 20 years ago? 2,000 years after the Romans showed up in London, was it a good investment to buy London property? Right? I mean, these are scarce, desirable properties, right? It's 15 years late is not late, right? The difference between the winners and the losers is the winners buy something valuable and the losers are afraid, right? The losers are afraid to buy the valuable thing because it's too expensive. New York real estate was the most expensive real estate in the United States 300 years late. Right? It's always been the most expensive. Apple Computer was founded, I think, 1976, around then. 15 years after Apple Computer was founded, was it a good investment, right? Check the price of Apple stock in 1993 or 1996. I think in 1998, Michael Dell told the board they should shut it down, give the money back to the shareholders. But the truth is, at many, many points in time, it was a good investment. I think, as I'd said, the real key is to understand what is Bitcoin's use case. It's digital capital. Well, how big is that? $400 trillion? Right? How much capital is locked up in real estate, equity, currency, bonds, collectibles, trophy assets, precious metals in the year 2024, right? It's probably half the value of most residential real estate is the monetary premium. It's the capital. So, how do you know this? I give you a little test. Go to Miami Beach, go up and down the beach, and then count the number of lights on in a condo building on the beach. Or go to Monaco and count the number of lights on. And what you'll find is that 80 to 90% of all of the condos don't have lights on at night. So people have huge amounts of capital tied up in these idle assets. And there's a lot of reasons for them, but one reason is because they feel like their money is safer there. So in the 20th century, people basically bought sports teams. Ask yourself, what do rich people own when they get rich? They bought sports teams, they bought real estate, they bought companies, they bought land, they bought timber rights, they bought oil rights, they bought gold, they bought, bonds. They just bought stuff. Why? Because they knew if they left their money in the bank, it was going to dwindle away. Buy anything. They buy Picassos, they buy art, right? They buy stuff. So there was never a perfect digital capital. There was never a digital instrument where I could, if you were a rich Russian and you had a choice between buying a bunch of real estate in Moscow or buying Bitcoin, well, with ex post facto hindsight, looking back for the last 30 years, okay, now let's play that out and you're a rich Nigerian. Now you're a rich, Turk. Now you're rich in Lebanon, right? And we don't have to be rich. You can, anybody with any amount of money anywhere in the world, right? You've got the last 100 years of history. You live in Germany in 1930. What do you want, a building or Bitcoin? You live in Argentina. What do you want? You want to own land? You want to own a building? You want a company? You want Bitcoin? The currency is going to collapse 5 times in 140 years. 5 times, right? Okay, so this is why we want to study history. If you study history, you're going to find that the currency collapsed thousands of times. In fact, on average, it collapses everywhere. Probably, it collapses everywhere on average every 50 years in the history of the world. And that's maybe me being charitable. So, is it too late? Well, can you actually take all of your property, put it in your pocket, and leave the country on one-day notice if you need to? If not, then you're probably not too late, right? So if you go through that exercise, you can't take your building with you. You can't take your bars of gold with you. You can't take your stock shares with you. You know, people for a while, they bought paintings thinking I'll roll them up, but, you know, it might not be the easy to, you know, and the average person can't buy Picassos. They're not quite exactly at the price point. How do you buy $237 a Picasso a week, right? So Bitcoin represents digital property. What's the value of digital property? Hundreds of trillions of dollars. Is it overvalued? Not yet. It's $1 trillion right now. So when it's 100 times more valuable than it is right now, will it be overvalued? Not likely. It's probably still going to be appreciating faster than every other thing you can buy. Why? Because it's better than every other thing you can buy. Show me a hotel you can put in your pocket and teleport, right? $1 billion of gold is like 3,000 pounds, right? How are you going to move that, right? Right? Give me a company that's going to last through the next 3 CEOs, right? Do you know who the 3rd CEO will be after the one that runs the company now? And do you trust that person? Right? The S&P 500, haven't we established there's a 99% failure rate? These are the winners. There's a 99% failure rate to generate shareholder value amongst the 500 best companies in the world. Now, if there's a 99% failure rate amongst the 500 best companies in the world, then what's the failure rate amongst the 100 million companies in the world? You know, and what's the most successful nation-state currency in the history of the world? Well, if it's the dollar's lost 99.8% of its value in 100 years. Maybe 99.9% of its value. You could debate whether it's 99.8 or 99.9% of its value. Every other currency in every other country lost 100%. So if you're sitting around wondering, is Bitcoin overvalued? The question is overvalued versus what? Right? You're going to buy something, right? You're owning something in lieu of Bitcoin. What is that something which is better? Right? That's the real question. Because not selling is buying, but not buying is selling, right? And you've basically got a certain amount of economic energy. It's deployed somewhere, right? And the question is, what are you invested in that you think is better? And I think everybody's got to answer that question themselves. But, you know, like if you owned a football team, like what's the odds that people are still going to watch football in 250 years? And what's the odds that you can put the football team in your pocket and leave the country? Not high, right? I mean, and what's the odds that, you know, you get attacked by, what if there's some law that says that you're liable for the physical damage and the emotional harm to the football players? And, you know, if someone gets hurt playing football, you have to pay $100 million settlement, right? That happens. Or even better would be, what happens if someone goes to a football game, watches it, and is traumatized by all the violence, and they form a class action lawsuit and they sue you? Mightn't that happen? Happens all the time. Right? Look at the history of opioids. Look at the history of cigarettes. Look at what's going on right now at congressional hearings around social media. At some point, you'll have trial attorneys suing tech companies because someone used a website and something bad happened to them, right? So there are a lot of risks no matter what you invest in. If you think you don't have risk, you're simply ignorant of the risk you're currently embracing. And I think that once someone understands fully all their range of risk, then your conclusion is, no, it's not too late to buy Bitcoin.
其实我也常常问自己这个问题，现在买比特币会太晚吗？最后在护国神山台积电中找到答案。台积电是全球领先的半导体代工厂商，成立于1987年，市占率高达 50% 以上。 户包含 Apple 和 Nvidia。我爸第一次看到台积电股票时是在2009年，价格是50元，很开心买了，但在70元卖了。我晚了10年，在2019年看到台积电，当时价格是200元。我问自己，现在买台积电会太晚吗？都上涨这么多了。犹豫后没有买，结果到了2024年，台积电股价最高曾到1000元。如果有时光机可以回到2019年，我会告诉过去的自己，虽然台积电已经上涨到200元，但是现在买台积电不会太晚，因为在5年后它会上涨到1000元。同样的道理也适用在比特币上。2021年，当中美洲国家萨尔瓦多宣布将比特币列为法定货币时，吸引了我的注意。研究比特币后，我认为很值得投资，但有一个缺点，就是太贵了。一颗比特币要价3万美元，1年前还不用1万美元，更不用说5年前还不到1000元。但我还是想投资。感谢比特币，我投资后价格从3万美元最高曾上涨到7万美元，涨幅超过1倍。所以现在买比特币会太晚吗？我认为不会，你觉得呢？欢迎在底下留言分享你的看法，并且如果你也看好比特币未来的发展，想要跟上时代的红利，让资产翻倍，我准备一份比特币懒人包，非常适合你。总结我过去3年在比特币投资中的成功与失败经验，分享了正确的投资心态和使用步骤。你可以在资讯栏的第2条连结中找到。目前已有超过500人领取，早早享受到了投资的回报。只要花3分钟看完，不用20年后，相信只要3个月后，你也会有同样的感受。还有一个投资者常见的问题是，比特币价格波动太大，有没有其他更稳定的投资方法？还真的有，透过放贷，把钱借给交易员，赚到稳定的利息，再也不用每天滑手机，害怕币价暴跌亏钱。只要每天睡到自然醒，等着收利息，出去玩，是不是超幸福？
是。
投资大师巴菲特曾说，人生就像滚雪球，你只要找到湿的雪和很长的坡道，雪球就会越滚越大。对我来说，放贷就是币圈的雪球。投资币圈4年来，这是唯一持续获利的方式，更成功帮助我在2022年裸辞，在2023年买下人生第1间房子，超级感谢币圈。如果你跟3年前的我一样，是一位努力的上班族，每天熬夜加班，却连加班费都不能实报，只换来一句 Emma 辛苦了。薪资有天花板，但是工作量没有天花板，不满意收入，想要透过投资改变人生。我准备了一个45分钟的影片，分享自己是如何从什么都不懂的投资新手，到现在成功打造一份稳定安心的被动收入，甚至帮助我离开职场，开启人生新的篇章。你可以在资讯栏的第1条连结中找到，并且限时免费加送投资比特币胜率 99% 的秘密，相信一定能帮助你投资币圈更顺利。最开心的是，不只有我从中获利，来自台湾、杜拜、香港各地的同学们也都成功透过币圈放贷获利，实现躺平赚钱的目标。下一位幸运儿是你吗？
你好，幸运儿。
In every generation, you have to consider the transformational technologies that remake the world. You know, whether it's the internal combustion engine, or whether it's a computer chip, or whether it's the internet, or whether it's the airplane, or whether it's the piano, you know, figure out, or the electric guitar, right? What's the transformational technology? I rather think right now it looks like the transformational technologies for the next 20 to 30 years are digital intelligence, that is AI, and then digital money or digital energy, which is Bitcoin, right? And the idea that, you know, you can embed digital intelligence into a car, a plane, a drone, a robot, a website, a product, a service, an AI, that's a big idea. And certainly there are going to be massive fortunes made. And if you understand how to embed digital intelligence, right, there's going to be a demand for that. And with regard to digital energy, right, the idea you can embed digital energy into a product, a service, a website, a company, a country, you know, an institution, right, is a big idea. So you ought to think about how you might take advantage of that. Now, there may be other things, right, in the domain of medicine or physics or the like. I'm not an expert on all. I mean, these are two obvious transformational technologies. I would say pick the thing that you love, the thing that you're most interested in, and then I would say focus. Because the most common mistake I think people make is, well, there's two mistakes. One is they pick the last generation technology, right? It's the thing that made your father or your grandfather or your great-grandfather famous, successful, rich, powerful, right? Is probably not going to work for you. You know, you're not going to fight the next war with the same weapons you fought World War II with. And they didn't fight with the same weapons they fought the Civil War with. And you're not going to get rich the same way John D. Rockefeller got rich. So don't try to do what's been done. It doesn't matter how hard you work. No amount of work, right, is going to allow you to overcome a technology disadvantage, right? Nobody cares how hard you work if you're working with a hammer, trying to hammer your way through a mountain. So that's the first thing you don't want to do. But the second thing is, oftentimes people, they find that technology and they have a modicum of success and they get going on that platform. And then they declare victory and they think they take that for granted. So then they go to find the next success. So they want to conquer the second thing and then the third thing and then the fourth thing and then the fifth thing. And what happens, it might be something as simple as you're successful on YouTube. And so then you decide you're going to do TikTok. But TikTok is different than YouTube. And so, you find yourself basically creating mediocre TikTok things, and then your YouTube content gets mediocre too. And then someone else, offers you a third thing and you decide that's what you're going to do. And pretty soon you're doing three things and everything's mediocre. And gradually, your customer base, your fan base falls off, your support falls off because you diluted your focus. I think here's the phrase I would leave you with, right? Nobody fails because they pursue bad ideas to the detriment of their good one. They fail because they pursue good ideas to the detriment of their great one. Right? So figure out the one thing that you can be great at, and then don't make the mistake of diluting your focus and your effectiveness because you're good. It's like, don't be Michael Jordan, the basketball great, and then go play baseball. You'd be a professional baseball player. 1 in a million people could be a professional baseball player. But you see, trading the 1 in a billion to be 1 in a million is a mistake. And he figured it out, right? Hopefully you figure it out. The tragedy is you have something which is going to work and then you get distracted, right? And a lot of these people look at Apple computers, like Steve Jobs. It's like at the point everybody's written you off, the difference is they don't quit. Like they don't give up ever, ever, ever. They just keep going, laser-like focus. And it's easy to say, but how many people can keep laser eyes on Twitter for 4 years? That's the joke. If you went and counted the number of people that put laser eyes and then they took them off after 3 months or 3 weeks or 3 days or 3 years. And of course, the irony is, right, you can't even get a college degree in less than 4 years. You can't be a doctor without 10 years of work. But a lot of people, they just expect it to work in 10 weeks or 10 months. And I would say, my advice to anybody is find something that gives you a technology edge or lever, the ability to create something which impacts the most amount of capital or the most number of people. You want to have the maximum impact, whatever that is, the max leverage. And then once you figure that out, relentlessly refine your craft, 10,000 hours, And then by the way, 10,000 hours to become the great guitar player, or the great piano player, or the great podcaster, or the great whatever it is. After you do that, then go do it. And then after you get recognized as being successful, don't go on to the next thing, right? Focus upon the thing, right? Keep doing the thing. Don't take your success for granted. Because I think we see all the time people, they take their success for granted, and then they go off to conquer the next, the next objective, thinking that somehow it'll be just as easy and it's important for them to do it. And what happens is that second thing dilutes the first thing. And by the third thing, they've diluted everything. And by the fourth thing, they're just dropping all the balls and everything comes crashing down. And there's somebody else in the world, they're going to put in the 10,000 hours and they're not going to get distracted and they're going to eat you because it's a very Darwinian world and it's very competitive. And if you're not insanely good at something, it's not clear that anybody's going to need you for anything.
你认同亿万富翁 Michael Saylor 的观点吗？跟上时代趋势，专心才能致富，分心反而失败。一、认同，保持雷射眼，专注目标。二、不认同，斜杠获得更多机会。为什么呢？欢迎在底下留言分享你的看法。我是 Emma， 还会继续分享关于币圈投资、被动收入的经验。记得按赞、订阅、开启旁边的小铃铛，并打开全部。还有 follow 我的 IG 哦，那你就不会错过这些知识了。我们下周见，拜拜。